Um,
Sorry.
and so as mentioned, this will be going on YouTube, so we will have this recorded right now. So today we're going to be going over with guest speakers. We have Krista Khan Johnson, she's from the Cary Town Council, as well as Megan Patton from Raleigh City Council. So both of them, they're going to go over what do these positions even mean? What are we voting on? How do they impact us on our day to day? A lot of people are not aware of how the local positions that we elect actually impact our day to day, but they actually have huge impacts on us. So they're going to go over that for us today. And then you guys can look forward to August and September. We're going to be doing candidate interviews that we were going to record with those candidates in their town, just for them to kind of explain why they're running, what they're running for, what they plan to do if they do get in that position, so you guys can get to know the candidates more. So we'll be posting those on all of our social media, and that will be really heavily in August, September. And then on September 21st, we're going to have a panel with those candidates from all the different Wake County positions. And then they're going to do a meet and greet with you. So this is something that you guys are all invited to. We'll be posting more about it. We'll have the mobilized link ready soon. And again, what that is the local candidates for these Wake County elections, they're going to just give couple minute speech, just kind of explain, again, why they're running their campaign. And then after they all talk, everyone will break out into their own town areas. So Garden will be in one area, Cary in another, etc. With all the different towns. So you guys can actually meet the candidates that are running in your town. Since I know if you're in Cary, maybe Gardner doesn't impact you and vice versa specifically. So this will give you time to actually talk to candidates you can vote for. So that's what we have coming up. And then just so you guys know what towns are coming up with these local elections, because it's not every single one in Wake County, but it is a majority of them. This is the full list here. If you guys lived here, make sure that you're definitely paying attention. But of course, we'll have towns and cities like Raleigh coming up next year and other years. So we'll have to focus on this yearly to make sure everyone's voting in these local elections. The candidate filing did happen already. So the candidate list is at the bottom. Again, the link will be embedded when you get the slides. And then there's also an election schedule. So that tells you when you need to request your mail-in ballot, when you need to make sure that you're registered. All those details are there for you in that link as well.
So today we have guest speaker Carissa Johnson. She is a Cary Town Council member and also a candidate for re-election this year. And she is going to chat with us for a little bit about how municipal governments operate and how we can be a part of that. Carissa, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jeanette, and hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. I get really very excited to do civics lessons, so I know my enthusiasm is going to seem a little strange because it's not always everybody's favorite topic, but I think this group is very civic-minded, so hopefully you'll find this information useful. And if you'll move along to the next slide. I wanted to, first and foremost, thank you so much for what you're doing. Boy, is it. It is making an impact. People are noticing. I am very excited to say I was like, hey, I need to be in my local group. And I just want to highlight my volunteers there because folks that get involved are the reason why, especially at the local level, a lot of us are able to get our name out there and get elected. And it is absolutely hypercritical. So any opportunity I get to highlight my fantastic volunteers and thank folks that are getting involved, I gotta jump on it. So thank you. If you can move along. I did want to share for those of you that are either in Cary or know somebody in Cary, we are no longer the only municipality in Wake County having our elections in October all by ourselves. We are now in November on odd years. So of course we're now going to have an election this November. We've changed our election method as well. So it's basically a plurality method, winner takes all. We no longer have runoffs. So it's, turning out during the initial election is more important than ever. And this year we have District A and C, and then my seat on Town Council is up for re-election. And I wanted to mention that early voting, it's different town to town. I always like to take the opportunity to explain that early voting, if you want to early vote in an election and you live in Wake County, you can vote at any Wake County early voting location.
Yeah.
Right. And if you are in Cary, we're only going to have that October 25th to November 1st location open at the community center, but you're welcome to use any in the weeks before that. And of course, the election date is now November 4th. And the next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about local government. If you want to move to the next slide, you'll see I'm talking about Cary. But let me tell you quickly ahead of this that this is our style of local government is a really common form of local government. While some of the details may change, if most of your local municipalities are going to be structured the same way we are. So we have a council that's elected by all of our residents. So ours consists of 7 members, a mayor, and then 2 at-large representatives. All 3 of those people are elected by everybody in their town. And then we have our town separated into districts, and just those districts vote for an individual representative for them. We have staggered 4-year terms, so we're not all new at once. And everybody on our council, including the mayor, has an equal vote. So moving on. In the county, I always like to highlight, a lot of people don't really grasp what's different between your county government and your local government. One of the really important things, I'm not going to read this slide for you here, but one of the important differences is, the ETJ. We love to talk in acronyms in government, the extraterritorial jurisdiction. That's somebody who's not in a municipality, so they're not in the boundaries. And the county government is typically going to give those residents the type of services that a local government delivers to their residents that are within their boundaries. So I always like to point that out because there is a lot of people who aren't within, their local municipality. So the county is sort of serving as both their local and county government. And if you want to move on to the next slide. And so these are the 2 types of local government. There's a few others that are a little different, but the vast majority of governments in the United States are one of these 2 types of governments at the local level. So the mayor and council method of local government really is the mayor is running the town. He's the executive, or she's the executive, or they are the executive. And then the council is legislative. And they do have some large cities, I guess, could try to do a different form of government, but this is really effective because you really have to have that individual at the head so that it's not so, it's really difficult when you have a large council making a lot of decisions. But what we have here in Cary, and what's the most common form of municipal government is council manager. And so what we do is we hire a CEO for the town, a town manager, and the mayor is part of the council. And then we are really determining policy as a council. And then the town manager and the staff are the ones that actually do the work. I always joke that we don't really do the work on council here in Cary, that it's our staff. But that's where it's an important thing to understand is the staff is incredibly important. So being able to recruit and retain some of the best folks you can find to be on staff is really what determines the quality of life a lot of times in your municipality. You want to move on? And so this is just so you could see it. I love to do a chart. So you've got your mayor and council. And what we do is we appoint 3 important individuals, our town attorney, the town manager or CEO, and then our town clerk. So they get appointed. And then the town manager appoints the fire chief, the police chief, and all the department directors. And that's important to understand because we're basically a municipal corporation. And so there is a true hierarchy, but above us, the mayor and council is in charge, but honestly, we report to the taxpayers, we report to the residents, we report to the folks that elect us. So it really is very similar to how a lot of corporations are structured. This is really how our local services flesh out at the local level. It's not identical in every community, but especially in Wake County, I think you'll find that the local government is delivering the services listed here. And one of the important things I always like to point out is planning, inspection, and inspections. That permitting, planning, inspections, that's something we have to do by statute. There's a few other things, police and fire. I think you'll find that they're universal, but there also are some, additional things that we do that vary municipality to municipality. For example, Cary has a water utility, and we supply water to a lot of our neighbors in the airport. So that's something that's a little bit different about Cary. But otherwise, most municipal governments do have all of these local services. These really directly affect your quality of life. And I like to point this out because when you look at this and you see police and you see fire and you see public works, these are the types of things that, when neglected or mismanaged, they can really have a significant negative impact on your community. So if you don't have representatives at the local level that are trying to, I'll say, sow the seeds of some really positive things in those departments, things can get very, very challenging very quickly. But in a nutshell, this is the primary way that we're structured. And of course, this is all run by our town manager's office. And this is also why often when you reach out to an elected official at the local level and you ask them to do something about a matter that is in one of these bubbles, a lot of times they will refer you to staff. It really depends on the style of the elected official, but if we have a really competent manager and excellent department heads, we typically do not, a lot of us, I don't want to say we don't, a lot of us are not interfering in a lot of the operations at these levels. We will if really necessary, but if we've done a really good job with hiring and then appointments, then our staff should be able to handle that for the citizens, because they are in service in the same way that your local elected officials are. And this is how we're structured. So I did want to show visually that we have our residents, that's our boss, right? So, and then we got the town council, the 7 of us that set the policy, but we have these boards and commissions. And this is something I always like to point out to groups that are looking to get involved. Our boards and commissions here in Cary, and I know this is true of other municipalities and cities, they really do advise council on a lot of things that are really important. We have everything ranging from senior advisory boards to an HRID board to environmental advisory board and even technology, lots of different boards. And so we look to them. We actually go to them when we present ideas and topics and get their feedback. Those boards and commissions are a really excellent way to influence things at the local level. So I wanted to make sure to give that a shout out. So I included this slide in the deck. And then moving on, how do we pay for all of this? This is the important piece that's kind of difficult to understand. So this is the budget framework. This is very typical for municipalities in North Carolina. So we've got our operating budget. That's routine operations, the service and programs that probably touch you every day if you do things like parks and recreation, or if you are at an event and Public Works is doing something really great. That's coming out of that operating budget, which is critical. We also have a capital budget, and that's infrastructure. When you see us building something or enhancing it or making it better or resurfacing it, typically that's out of the capital budget. And then both budgets, they're managed through funds. So they are separate entity funds. Of course, we do have reserve funds as well, but these things are treated somewhat separately when you go to look at a budget. So I wanted to shout this out, because a lot of times what happens is people will look at our budgets and they're very, very complicated. A lot of times I say, just read the summary at the beginning, right? But it's very important to understand that you've got to look at both of those numbers combined. And that's where we get our budget for the year. In Cary, it's a little over 500 million now for several years in a row. Other municipalities, if they're a little smaller, that it's not quite that big. Other municipalities that are bigger, and especially if they have more residents or bigger services, that number will be a pretty big number. And here's the important piece of the puzzle. I know nobody likes property taxes. Actually, I think people universally hate property taxes. And the theory is it's because it's paid in a lump sum and it's a little bit painful instead of spread out like other taxes. But we have really 2 revenue sources primarily to pay for all the services we deliver at the local level. It's property tax and sales tax. We have some fees, and I'm going to show you a chart after this, but not quite yet. But those fees, building permits, if you register for a class, those really don't equate, especially in Cary. I can't speak for every municipality again, but they're typically not a huge portion of the funding that helps us run your local government and services. The property tax and sales tax are the main sources, and we really don't have the right given to us by the General Assembly to diversify our revenue sources. So that's why you'll see your property taxes are very reactive to whatever's going on in the local economy, because the other piece of that puzzle is our sales tax. It's collected at the state level. If you buy something in your municipality, that sales tax doesn't go to your municipality, it goes into a big bucket at the state level. And then the state divides those sales taxes into receipts that are paid to the individual municipalities based off of population. So that's a very big factor in keeping healthy funds for less densely populated and less affluent counties in North Carolina. So, sales tax is flattened out a bit for us here in Cary, I can tell you that, and that is reflected in what we have to do with our, solid waste fees and property taxes. So I always take the opportunity when I can to explain the sales tax and property tax relationship to how we pay for everything at the municipal level, so that people understand that we really don't have additional levers to, turn on and off to fund our activities at the local level. And then the next slide is going to show you that in a chart. So this will give you a great idea of just how little of our government, our local government funding, it actually comes from sources like state and federal government, although it is not an insignificant slice of the pie, and when it's cut, it does hurt. But permits and fees, other things like, interest on our reserve funds, that kind of stuff, those really aren't a huge piece of the pie. So if sales tax revenue slips, in particular, if we lose state and federal funding, you'll probably in any municipality see that affect your property taxes. So that's my entire, condensed local government Cary 101 presentation. If you have any questions, or if you want additional information, boy, oh boy, do we have slides. Feel free to reach out to me. And if you want to learn more about me, you can check out my website. But one of the things I did want to share is us at the local level in particular. We are the bench for the state and federal positions that so much of us feel passionate, and we're working to get the right people elected to. So I will share with you, I work with several of our North Carolina General Assembly representatives, state and House. A lot of these folks started at the local level. Our county commissioners often start in other places. So I can't stress enough how much it helps us build a really strong bench that can reflect the values that we share if you are helping your local candidates get elected, because it really does make an impact at the higher levels of government as well. And that's it.
Thanks, Carissa. I think we're at a point where we could drop the slides and maybe just have some open Q&A, if that's okay with Carissa.
I love it.
And we'll take a look at the chat and see if there are any interesting questions there that we can propose.
I see one about the board or commissions. We have what we do in Cary, and I think it's fairly similar in other places. We have an open application period. We just had it this year in June, and people apply for an appointment to those boards. And then each board has a council liaison, and we review the applications, and using it, really, for me, it's whatever criteria I think is appropriate for the board, or to round out the individuals on the board. Then we interview people and appoint them to those boards or commissions in 2, 3, or 4-year term, depending on the board. And the reason why I mention that, it's important. We a lot of times have the same people over and over and over again, and they bounce from board to board, and we're always looking for new people in Cary. And I'm sure that's true in other places. They can bring a fresh perspective. A lot of times people think you have to live in a municipality forever. Let's be honest, look where we live. You don't have to be here forever. A lot of people are new, and we love new perspectives.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your expertise.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to turn this over to Katie to introduce Megan Patton.
And if you guys have any questions while Megan's speaking as well, feel free to drop anything in the chat, and we'll make sure we cover those after. And then after Megan speaks as well, we'll open it up so you guys can unmute yourselves and talk. We'll let you know what that time is as well. So we do have Megan Patton here. She is Raleigh City Council, District B. She was elected in 2022, serves as chair of the Transportation and Transit Committee, as well as a member of the Growth and Natural Resources Committee, also active in Moms Demand Action and the PTA, and works as a customer service manager in the digital space. So Megan is awesome. So she is going to kind of explain more of the Raleigh side. So we heard a lot from Cary Town Council. So we're going to hear if there's anything that varies between a city council, town council, and then just any other information that she can provide us on these local positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, y'all, glad to be here. Carissa was very comprehensive and thorough, so I will just sprinkle in some extras. So here in the city of Raleigh, we have 8 on our council, and it's a similar structure. So we have a mayor, and then we have 2 at-large members, and then we have 5 district members. In our city in Raleigh, every resident gets 4 votes. So every resident gets to vote on the mayor, the 2 at-large members, and then whichever district they live in, they'll be able to vote on that district representative. As a note, other municipalities, it sounds like that's the same in Cary. In other municipalities, they might call them districts, but every resident gets to vote wherever you live. So there are some subtle variations on that. And then the Wake County Commission has previously been set up that way. So you would see someone named, District 1, but they'll be on every ballot in Wake County. The Wake County Commission will be moving to a new format in the fall or with the midterms. So all other 11 municipalities run in the odd years, like this year. The Raleigh City Council runs with the midterms and the presidential year elections. So we will be up for primaries in March, and then we'll run in the general in November, just like your General Assembly members and senators and everyone else who'll be on your ballot that you expect to see in November. So that's the Raleigh City Council. We have previously been plurality races. So if you win by one single vote, you get it. We will be moving to primaries and then the general so that you can feel confident everyone who represents you on the city council has won by 50% plus 1 of the vote. So that's the Raleigh City Council. Raleigh has about 500,000 residents, and we have a budget of about $1.8 billion. Unlike our colleagues at the state and federal levels, municipalities have to pass a balanced budget every single year and on time. So we have a hard and fast deadline, and our budgets have to be balanced every year. No printing money here at the local level. No continuing resolutions. So just kind of building off of what Carissa's already said, Cary and Raleigh both provide water. We provide water to not only Raleigh residents, but to our friends in Eastern Wake County. So Wendell, Zebulon, Nidale, Rolesville, and Wake Forest all receive water served by Raleigh Municipal Water that comes from Falls Lake. So everything at the municipal level is really connected so for instance, our water comes from Falls Lake, but Falls Lake is not really in Raleigh. It's not really in Wake County. So we set our own development regulations for the Raleigh city limits, but we need to form partnerships, and we have these other organizations that help prevent or help sort of regulate development around Falls Lake, because the development around Falls Lake impacts the runoff and then how much it costs to treat the water before it goes through your pipes and into your water cup. So just as a reminder, everything's very interconnected in all of this. So it takes good people all over the place. Carissa mentioned the council manager form of government. That's the most common type of government in North Carolina and across mid-sized towns and cities across America. The other form of government is called mayor council, or you might hear it referred to as a strong mayor. And so those are if you think about I feel like the New York City mayor's race is very much in the news right now. And you think about how come Eric Adams gets to go around sort of giving orders and stuff. And that's because those forms of government are much more similar to sort of a governor, general assembly, or a president and Congress type setup. That is really not what's happening in your municipalities. So just if you ever think why doesn't my mayor do that? It's probably the short answer is they can't. That's just not how their government works. Another kind of vocabulary word that might be useful to remember is Dillon rule versus home rule. So you might sometimes see a news article that's Colorado City does blah, blah, blah to end homelessness. And you might think, why doesn't my city do that? That sounds great. And again, there might be a really short answer, which is they can't. So home rule states are ones where the locality has a lot of authority. They get to make and execute their laws as long as they're like in compliance with the US Constitution. Um, in a Dillon rule state, which is what we live in, North Carolina, our local authority is granted to us expressly by the General Assembly, and it is also taken away commonly by the General Assembly. So if you say, like, if you've ever thought to yourself, why doesn't my municipality make them save half the trees on a lot before they build new buildings? There's it, they can't. Like we as municipal leaders cannot just enact sweeping land use and zoning regulations. They exist in this sort of structure of how far we're allowed to go or not go. And on both a full statewide level and also at a very individual level, our General Assembly members can give or take away those authorities. So, for instance, the city of Southport lost all of their authority to regulate trees. They sort of angered one person who knew one guy, and now they don't have any authority. And um, the town of Leland lost all their annexation abilities, so they cannot annex any more lands. So they can run so sometimes these General Assembly members can run local bills that affect one city or town, or they can enact statewide laws that limit or theoretically grant us more authority. So just something to know there, Dillon rule versus home rule. As Carissa mentioned, we're policymakers, but not like executors. So if someone calls me and says, my trash didn't get picked up, it's not going to be me who comes to pick up your trash. I'm going to get that to the person who can help. And it's really more of our job to watch for broad trends and themes. So if we suddenly start hearing that nobody's trash is getting picked up, then we know we have a problem to solve. Or if conversely, if our staff comes to us and says, hey, we're really not able to meet the need, we need something else to help us, then it's our job to make sure they have the budget to buy new garbage trucks or the budget to hire more people or the software they need to make new maps so they can pick up the trash efficiently. So we're policymakers and not like executors. And then the one last thing I wanted to mention is that what related to taxes, related to property taxes, you pay your city tax and you pay county tax. And if you use an escrow, then they're probably like your homeowner's insurance is going to be wrapped up in that too. So it has a lot of things in it. I don't know that everyone knows, so hopefully this is helpful new information, but the county is the one who sets your property value. So the Wake County government is the one going around like looking at each house on the street saying like, this house is worth $400,000. This house is worth $700,000 or whatever. That's the county government setting the value of each property. The city has its own property tax rate that is set by those elected officials. So we don't control how much your property is valued. We just control the rate. So in the city of Raleigh, our property tax rate is 38 cents per $100. And that can go up or down as Carissa mentioned, in reaction to market conditions, needs, all of that. But I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And also that the state requires us to have a uniform tax code. So if you've ever thought to yourself, like, why doesn't the skyscraper pay more taxes than me? They do pay the same rate. It's based on the value of their property, but we can't say, for instance, we wouldn't be able to do something like, say, seniors pay 15 cents per hundred and young folks pay 38 cents per hundred. Those types of distinct differences are not legally allowed to do. So hopefully those are just some sprinkles on the top of Carissa's very thorough presentation.
Megan, would you be able to go into, because you've done a great job with this on social media, just go into some of the examples of things that you've actually done that we'd be able to be like, oh, okay, this is our city or town council members that we're electing or whoever. This is something that they have done that I could actually go and see.
Yeah. We try to, I always use the tagline, "We worry so you don't have to." So um, we're doing a lot of the things on the ground so that your quality of life is just sort of seamlessly a very good existence. So we resurface the streets in the city of Raleigh, and we are we there's a difference between state roads and city roads. That's an important note. But for city roads in Raleigh, we resurface them on a regular cadence, and we're putting down this cooling pavement technology. So it's like filled with zinc and it deflects more light so those roads don't get as hot. And it's going to be the equivalent of taking something like 29,000 cars off the road once we're done with a 10-year project. So when we resurface your streets, we also put in traffic calming. So when people are, if you've ever thought like, why are people speeding down my road? We're putting in the speed bumps or the chicanes or the bike lanes or whatever that calm the traffic so kids in your neighborhood can safely walk to school. Sometimes it's even little stuff that's not sexy at all. Like we're in our last budget allocated funds to repaint all the fire hydrants with better reflective paint so that, and that's something that you probably never think about. But if your home catches on fire in the night, you want those firefighters to be able to see that fire hydrant quickly so they can put your fire out expeditiously. So those are a few examples. I could go on and on and on.
Thank you. No, that's super helpful. I feel like definitely the speed bumps is like, okay, I know who puts that in. And I know one of the biggest things in Wake County, I feel like, is parks. I think we can all say we enjoy our parks here. What is the town council mayor, like how do they work with parks and how do they influence those?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, obviously there are national parks, state parks. There are some county parks, but I would say like by and large, if you're at a park, it's probably a city or town park. Um, the city of Raleigh ran a parks bond on our 2022 ballot. And so a bond referendum, like when you vote on your ballot, what you're really doing is kind of giving the city permission to take out debt on your behalf. The promise for repayment is your tax dollar. And you're committing to a set of packages, like a certain package. You're saying, with my tax dollars, you can build these new parks or update these parks. You're presented with a package that's usually available online. And usually there's been a long public engagement process where you've been able to take surveys or chime in on which parks or improvements or greenways you think are the most important. And then once that bond passes, that's the commitment from the city to use your tax dollars on those projects. So City of Raleigh passed a big parks bond. It's a 5-year runway and we're about 2 years into it. So we spent the first year doing public engagement. So we said, these are the new parks we're going to build. What do you all want to see at them? We created these action groups so people from the area could join the action group and take in feedback from their book clubs and their HOAs and all of that. They made their master plans, and now as we are in year 2, we're really in the like executing phase, right? We said, okay, you citizens had a big hand in crafting these master plans. Now we're going to go forth and build them the way you said you wanted them to be built. So this is really where the civil engineers and the geotechnical people are like testing soils and figuring out like how deep the basketball court needs to be in the ground so that it's stable. The mayor and the council's role across this arc can vary a little bit, right? Our first job is to make sure the public's engaged the right amount, and then it's our job to really set the priorities for staff to execute. So if we care mostly about it being on time and less about it being on budget, then we can signal that priority to our staff. If we care most about it being on budget, then we can signal to our staff like which parts we're willing to trim if there's cost overruns and that kind of thing. So we sort of act in an oversight capacity in that way.
That's awesome. Thank you. And then I see we just got a question in the chat. So given that Raleigh, and this is also open to Krista as well, so all of our Q&A time. So given that Raleigh is governed by Dillon's rule, that seems to give a lot more authority to the General Assembly. Given the somewhat extreme state of the General Assembly, I find it concerning that local government and our city, by extension, could experience retaliation for ruffling someone's feathers. I can barely say this, catastrophizing?
Catastrophizing. I don't think you are catastrophizing. It is a challenging environment to try to govern. with this type of structure. To me, it's been, we've certainly been in situations where we thought we've done a process that's very transparent and accessible to folks, but have had one sort of disgruntled member of the community with one good connection, and one bill can be run, and it's difficult to, have policymakers who are not necessarily dedicated to finding the data or following up with us as the local electeds to navigate a situation. But I don't know, Carissa might have had a different experience in Cary.
Oh, no, we have to be careful. And I will say it makes us very hesitant to do something and ask for permission later, right? Because there can be responsive legislation that really, one of the reasons why you see us not go far enough is because we don't want there to be a backlash and remove what we can do from the list of things we're allowed to do. I think that's a fair way to say it. And it's the way our state is set up, and this isn't something the General Assembly has done recently to us. This is the way that our state governments are set up. We are chartered by our General Assembly. We exist at their pleasure, right? And there are other states like us. This is not today's General Assembly, is being rotten. It's just the way it is structured. Now, the makeup of the General Assembly really does, it's like having a very strict parent and having a more relaxed parent. So it really is sort of a governmental parent-child relationship. I love to use an analogy, so that's the analogy I would use.
Yeah, I agree. And to just sort of putting a star on, I agree that I think there are times when our residents would like us to be much braver and much bolder than they see us being. And this relationship really impacts that. And it does become a real challenge to try to represent the values you sent us here to represent in a way that doesn't actually further, uh, doesn't actually create consequences for us and you all as our residents.
Thank you. That's really helpful to see how the different governments work together in our state. We had a question says, are there systematic ways to establish connections with members of the General Assembly?
Yeah, I think so some things that we do in the city of Raleigh, one, our Wake County delegation is really responsive, really available. They are great at calling us when they say, hey, there's this bill. Is it about y'all? What's going on here? So we're very appreciative of the Wake County delegation. They live here all the time, so they want their locals to be successful, right? They're the ones also using parks and greenways and, you know, need our firefighters to respond in an emergency. So big ups to the Wake County delegation. I would say beyond that, what we try to do is find bedfellows with the same priorities on any given thing. So sometimes a General Assembly member might not be totally aligned with us on everything, but we know they have a passion for native planting. And we know we're prevented from doing some native planting legislation because of some state legislation, and maybe we can partner with them just on that one topic to get a release from a restriction that we need. We also have a lobbyist. The city employs a lobbyist to lobby on our behalf, and we do have an organization called the League of Municipalities, which is like sort of the lobbying organization for all municipalities that is like sort of united on shared values that are true, whether you are in Kinston or Little Washington or Raleigh or Charlotte. Things like having land use and zoning authority are important to all of us, so that General Assembly helps with that. But I would say understanding the individual values for each General Assembly member and how that impacts your locality is kind of been our strategy and could be a useful tool for all of you. I don't know, Carissa, if you have any color to add to that.
You nailed it. And I would say you'll see a lot of birds of a feather. I love bedfellows. That's a great way to say it because we really do have to work together with our county commissioners and our General Assembly representatives if we want to make really anything that's a significant change. So your local representative might be your best path to folks in the General Assembly if you're trying to make a connection. I'll mention that I do a lot of introductions for local people to their, because they're very eager to talk to their constituents, in my experience, especially the ones we have here in Wake County. So maybe your local representative is a good path.
Thank you both. And thank you for the question for a member. Next question was, how often do you meet and is it appropriate for citizens to attend meetings?
I don't have any formal pattern of meeting with General Assembly members in our delegation. It tends to be a little more timely and positioned on like the current events of the moment. So I represent the area that was considering a toll road on Capitol Boulevard. And so during that time, I met with the representatives of Wake Forest. I met with Mike Sheetzilt, who's a Republican. I had a phone call with Terrence Everett, who's a Democrat, but represent the same area. So those are just like phone calls or coffees that happened as a consequence of the, of a consequence of the moment. I personally don't have like a regular cadence of convening the delegation. They're very busy and part-time, if you can believe it, part-time legislators. I do run monthly meetings in person, and I sometimes invite other electeds to join me since I know that residents have crossover questions. You're welcome to attend those. You can find them on my website, patentforraleigh.com.
Awesome. So you have, is it like a virtual event or do you do it in person?
I usually do it in person at a coffee shop or a like brewery in the area.
Okay. And then how often do you meet with the other city council members?
Like my own colleagues for Raleigh or across municipalities?
From your own city council in Raleigh, like how often do you guys meet to make these decisions? And then when you guys have meetings, are they open to the public ever, or are they typically private meetings?
Gotcha. Yeah. I'll just speak for Raleigh. We do something every Tuesday. We have some sort of business every Tuesday. A lot. Raleigh City Council is also part-time, if you can believe that. But so a lot of my colleagues set aside Tuesday as their council day. So we'll all be sort of in the council office meeting and preparing and drafting memos and all of that. And then we do all of our meetings where all 8 of us are convened are open to the public. So you're welcome to attend them at City Hall. I wouldn't describe the times because it's like the first Tuesday we meet at this time and the second Tuesday we meet at this time. So you should just go find that on the website. But if you can't, they are available to watch on Channel 11, also on YouTube, or you can watch the recordings on YouTube. But yeah, we welcome you to attend those. And we do have public comment opportunities twice a month. So you can sign up and then just come sort of like open mic night. You can just come and give your comments to us.
That's awesome. Good to know it's open to the public.
Yeah, just to chime in too, work sessions. I know here in Cary we have a public meeting calendar. There's public meeting notice. There's rules. Anytime we have a quorum of our members of council, there has to be a public meeting notice, and of course the public is welcome. We'd love to see public at our meetings. We have retreats. We have quarterly half-day meetings. All of those things are open to the public. They do attend, and it is the public speaks out portion. I just want to, I'm so glad Megan mentioned that because that is a really great way for us to repeatedly hear the same thing and understand that this is something we need to be reactive to. So showing up at a council meeting and very respectfully saying, hey, this is something I'm concerned about or I want is a really great way to get our attention as well. And, perhaps make a relationship with your local elected.
Yeah, that is awesome. I did have a follow-up question on that. How far in advance does one have to sign up for public comment? So is there a requirement that you have to sign up ahead of time?
It's helpful to do it here in Cary, but you're welcome just to show up and let the clerk know when you get there, and the mayor just calls for anybody to step up if they want. But that's how it works in Cary. I do know that's different city to city, especially in larger places. I think Raleigh probably has a different process than we do.
Yeah, I do think that's going to be very specific to your board. So check your local municipality website. For Raleigh, our public comments on a Tuesday. We ask that you sign up by Friday, the preceding Friday. We also like part of the reason we do that is just to plan for timing. We have in the past had 300 people sign up for public comment, and so that we have sometimes have to curtail the time any individual can speak so that our staff and even residents are not just waiting until 1 a.m. Um, so so ours is a sign up the Friday before. We also ask for a little description, although people provide it or don't, but we ask for a little description. And sometimes that helps because if we know it's just a constituent service, like, hey, my trash didn't get picked up, we're actually just probably going to call you on the phone and say, hey, can we help you with the trash issue? And we're going to save you a trip down to City Hall. While we welcome you, we're happy to save you a trip too.
Thank you both. That's awesome. That was all the questions I see so far in the chat. If you guys have any others, feel free to drop them, or if you'd like to mute yourselves as well. If there are no more questions, I think there was just one to kind of make sure everyone knows who they're voting for. So whenever someone goes to vote, we talked about doing the early voting, mail in, do it in person. How do they know ahead of time who they can even vote for, since it is a bit confusing with different wards and districts and everything?
Well, it should be on everybody's website. I know on our website, we have a page that explains who your representatives are. So I imagine virtually every municipality has that. And we do a mailer, so you get it in your inbox each year. Here's your representatives, and here's when and where you can vote for them. But unfortunately, it's, again, going to be different in every municipality, depending on resources and their cadence of communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two things that might be helpful. One is at any time you can go, if you Google NC voter lookup, that's like takes you to the North Carolina Board of Election voter directory. And if you enter your name, your first and last name, or your address, it'll show you like a comprehensive list of all your elected. So it'll show you who your senators are, not the names, but it'll show you the positions. So it'll show you that you're in Raleigh City Council District B or Board of Education District 6. Like, it'll show you all of those things. So that's available at any time. And then within a range of an election, you can go to that same place and pull up a sample ballot. So you can actually see like who's going to be in each section, and that can help you tailor your Googling so that you're not just Googling every candidate who's running for any office. You can kind of be a little more honed with your research.
Awesome, thank you. I think that'll be really helpful for people to use that right before the election, like a month or so before, if they're not aware of who they can vote for. Great. Do we have any other questions?
You're welcome to just unmute and say what you need to ask. Well, not hearing any questions, Carissa and Megan, thank you so much for being here. This is a wealth of information, and we are recording it. We're going to